Greetings, friends. You are watching the Ruslan Belov channel. Today we will take a detailed look at the situation in Ukraine as of December 26, 2025. A truly large number of events have taken place, and most of them are of fundamental importance. So without unnecessary introductions, let us move straight to the review. We are gradually approaching the final stage of the 2025 military campaign. In essence, only a few days remain, roughly 5 days of active combat operations, counting today as well. One might assume that with the end of the year approaching, the intensity of the fighting should begin to decrease. However, in practice, we are seeing a completely different picture. The flow of news continues to arrive from almost the entire front line. From the Zaporizhia direction, the Kupiansk sector, and the Sloviansk direction. All of this indicates that in the coming days, we should expect new important developments and undoubtedly further adjustments to the battlefield maps. So let us proceed step by step. The first area we will focus on is southwestern Ukraine, specifically the Odessa region. It was during the 2025 military campaign that the Russian side fundamentally changed its approach to this region. At present, the Odessa region is being subjected to massive strikes, the intensity of which has not been seen here since the very beginning of the special military operation. Last night, of course, was no exception. Video footage and confirmed information have emerged indicating that Russian forces carried out a large-scale strike on the city of Izmail, more precisely on its port infrastructure. The strikes were carried out using Gerund-type unmanned aerial vehicles. In addition, during the night, reports emerged that Caliber cruise missile carriers had entered the waters of the Black Sea, after which strikes were also carried out on the city, most likely against the same port infrastructure facilities, using these missiles. It is important to clearly understand the reasons behind such a high intensity of strikes on the Odessa region. With a high degree of probability, this is directly linked to the fact that the Ukrainian side is currently conducting counter-offensive actions in several sectors of the front. As a result, the volume and tempo of weapons deliveries have increased sharply. One of the key ways for the Russian Federation to reduce this flow is by striking logistics. We have repeatedly discussed that a significant volume of weapons and fuel enters Ukraine through the territory of the Odessa region, including from NATO countries, primarily Romania. According to various estimates, up to 60% of all fuel supplies pass through this region. As a result, the Russian side has effectively moved toward a strategy of blocking and isolating this area. At the same time, important footage has emerged today from the area of the settlement of Mayaki. I remind you that this is where a strategically important bridge across the Dniester River is located, effectively connecting the main part of Ukraine with the southwestern part of the Odessa region. Large logistical flows pass through this bridge, and over the past several days, the Russian side has regularly carried out strikes against this facility. As a result, the bridge has sustained serious damage. As early as December 21, 2025, video footage was published clearly showing holes and damage to the bridge's roadway. Then, on December 24, a new video appeared showing several trucks moving extremely slowly across the bridge. From that angle, damage and craters on the surface are clearly visible. Yet it is also evident that the bridge could still be used, albeit in a very limited capacity. The footage also shows road maintenance crews attempting to partially restore the roadway. However, on December 26th, a new video emerged that fundamentally changed the overall picture. In this footage, we see at least 2 vehicles moving across a pontoon crossing constructed over the Dniester, connecting the river's western and eastern banks. The vehicles move calmly across the crossing during nighttime. Later, another video was published, this time filmed during daylight hours, showing heavy traffic. Several dozen vehicles moving in both directions without visible difficulty. This clearly indicates the strategic importance of this crossing for the Ukrainian side. Frankly, it is difficult to recall cases where, under conditions of active combat, such critical infrastructure was restored in such a short period of time. This once again underscores the critical importance of this bridge. At the same time, such actions logically suggest that in the near future, the Russian side may once again carry out strikes, this time targeting the pontoon crossings, using Gerund-type drones. Next, we move to the Zaporizhia sector of the front, from where extremely important reports are also coming in. Over the past several days, Russian and pro-Russian sources, as well as neutral cartographic services, have reported significant advances by Russian units. This is how the map of the western Zaporizhia direction near Stepnohursk looked on December 24, 2025. Already on December 25th and 26th, information appeared indicating that Russian forces had significantly improved their positions both north of Stepnohursk and to the east, in the areas of the settlements of Lukyanivske and Pavlivka. This represents extremely important progress along two directions simultaneously. In the northern sector, Russian units are seeking to move right up to the settlements of Vasilyanka and Hrihorivka in order to establish control over them, including through the use of unmanned systems. At the same time, movement to the east continues. According to various cartographic services, approximately 20% of the strongpoints located between Stepnohursk and Orikhiv are likely already under the control of the Russian army. The map has been adjusted accordingly. Russian units have approached closely to Pavlivka and Novoyakivlivka. The Ukrainian side is attempting to slow this advance by all available means. At present, a concentration of Russian forces is being observed slightly south of Stepnohursk, within one of the residential districts. From there, further movement is taking place both northward and eastward, which is why this area is being regularly struck. The next sector is the eastern Zaporizhia direction, from which arguably the most significant news of the day is coming. Let us begin with the settlement of Gulyai-Polye and examine how the situation has changed over the past few days. This is how the map looked here on December 20th, 2025. According to assessments at the time, the Ukrainian side controlled approximately 50% of the settlement, while the remaining 50% was divided between the grey zone and areas under Russian control. As of today, the situation has changed dramatically. The latest adjustments show that the Russian army has significantly improved its positions both south and north of Gulyai-Polye. The town has effectively been taken into operational pincers. In addition, an active offensive is developing in the central part of the settlement. Today, several video recordings were published from the central districts. Particular attention was drawn to footage and a detailed report concerning the headquarters of the 102nd Territorial Defense Brigade of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, located in the city center. According to available information, Russian units managed to break through to this facility and effectively conduct an inspection. Numerous photographs were published showing abandoned laptops, notebooks, maps, and mobile phones. All of the discovered equipment was carefully collected and transferred to the appropriate authorities. It is obvious that such information falling into the hands of Russian units could significantly affect the planning of further operations. The headquarters contained a large amount of valuable data that will undoubtedly be used going forward. Later, another video appeared, this time from the area of the Silospmash plant in the central part of Gulyai-Polye. These images were published by Russian sources. In the footage, we see Russian soldiers raising flags in the center of the settlement. Based on this video material, as well as the information regarding the capture of the 102nd Brigade's headquarters, another adjustment to the map was made. Thus, we observe an active advance by Russian forces in the western direction, right up to the western outskirts of the city, along Shevchenko Street. The situation here is extremely difficult, and in fact, critical. Completing this operation is one of the priority tasks set by the Russian command before the end of 2025. Judging by the available video materials, it can be assumed that this task will most likely be completed either on Saturday or Sunday. Next, we move slightly northward, toward the area of the settlement of Kosivtsevo. From this direction as well, a large number of significant reports have arrived today. From early morning, various sources began publishing video footage of heavy weapons strikes on the settlement of Myrnohrad. From the very first viewing of these images, it becomes clear that the assault phase has begun. Most likely, Russian units have already entered the settlement, and fighting is taking place directly within the urban area. A little later, another video was published, followed by official confirmation from the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation. The settlement of Kosivtsevo has come under full and stable control of the Russian armed forces. Over the past several days, the map in this area has undergone serious changes. The Russian army is advancing confidently forward. As we discussed earlier, the possible loss of Myrnohrad could lead to serious consequences, not only on the military level, but also on the political one. The presence of a bridgehead on the Ukrainian side of the Hychel River, just 60 kilometers from the Zaporizhia agglomeration, creates conditions for a revision of Russia's peace settlement demands. The likelihood that these demands will become significantly tougher is extremely high. Next, we move to the Pokrovsk-Myrnohrad direction. This is another task that Russian units aim to complete before the end of the current year. As the map shows, part of Myrnohrad is still marked as a grey zone. These data are consistent across various cartographic sources, indicating the continued presence of scattered Ukrainian armed forces units in the city. Fighting there continues. Today, notable footage also emerged from the settlement of Rodinske. The images show Ukrainian assault groups operating in small teams of 3, moving from building to building, occupying positions, after which strikes are delivered against these positions using aviation and artillery. These images indicate that the Ukrainian side has launched a counter-offensive in the southern part of Rodinske and is attempting to improve its position in this sector. Most likely, the objective is to break through a corridor from southern Rodinske toward Krasny Lyman, and then further toward the northern part of Myrnohrad in an effort to extract those units that have managed to hold out up to this point. Thus, in the near future, extremely fierce fighting should be expected in this area, which will most likely continue right up to the new year and into the beginning of 2026. At the same time, information is coming in from pro-Russian experts indicating that Russian forces have managed to improve their positions north of Rodinske and have effectively taken control of the entire territory along the railway line between Rodinske and Dorozhne. A bridgehead is being formed for a future assault on the settlement of Belitske, which could begin in the near future. Finally, we move on to the Sloviansk direction, where the dynamics of events are beginning to develop particularly rapidly. The Russian army is conducting offensive operations along almost the entire sector, with the possible exception of the area around the city of Lyman. For nearly a month now, virtually no new information has been coming from this area. Most likely the command's task at this stage is first to straighten and stabilize the front line, after which Russian units may return to active operations directly in the area of the city itself. As of December 26th, information has emerged about the beginning of active combat operations and an extremely powerful, intensive offensive along the M03 highway. This information is currently being confirmed by several pro-Russian experts. According to the latest updates and map corrections, the Russian army has entered the territory of the settlement of Minkivka. It is also reported that Russian units have moved into Holubivka and Privilia. In addition, Russian forces are conducting active offensive operations along the Bondan-Kromivka line. All of these directions and axes of advance converge on a single key point, the settlement of Ry-Oleksandrivka. This settlement represents a critical node in the Ukrainian armed forces' defensive system, protecting Sloviansk and Kramatorsk. It is precisely toward this settlement that the Russian army is now advancing from multiple directions, underscoring its strategic importance within the framework of this operation. Extremely important information also emerged the day before. I remind you that yesterday the Ministry of Defense of the Russian Federation officially reported that Russian units had advanced in the area of the settlement of Sviato-Pokrovske. Based on this report, corresponding adjustments were made to the maps. This is how the situation looked on December 24th, and this is how it appeared on December 25th. However, despite these corrections, neither the Ministry of Defense nor other pro-Russian sources published any video materials yesterday that could visually confirm the reported advance. Confirming footage appeared only today, on December 26th, and notably it was published by Ukrainian sources. These videos show FPV drone strikes against positions of the Russian armed forces in this sector of the front. The footage was recorded in the area of one of the strongpoints. Based on these materials, no additional map corrections are being made. However, we can state with confidence that Russian soldiers were indeed present in this part of the Sviato-Pokrovsky area. Next, we move on to the Kupiansk direction. Today, the majority of cartographic services and analytical sources are sounding the alarm regarding the situation in this sector. Almost all of them agree that the Russian army is likely abandoning the western bank of the Oskil River and withdrawing to the eastern side. At the same time, according to a number of cartographic sources, the Ukrainian side has begun its own offensive on the eastern bank as well. So far, this information has not been fully confirmed visually. A large grey zone is present on the map, which we have added based on reports from several reliable sources. Overall, as you can see, the operational situation in this direction is extremely complex and unstable. At the same time, some experts are putting forward a rather interesting and unconventional interpretation of events. In their view, the current actions may be part of a plan aimed at forcing Sumy and Zaporizhia to deploy up to 4,000 troops into the Kupiansk area. In other words, the withdrawal of Russian units from Kupiansk that we are currently observing may not represent a defeat, but rather a deliberate maneuver. The goal of such a maneuver would be to compel the Ukrainian command to introduce a substantial garrison into the city in order to stabilize the situation and conduct clearing operations. Subsequently, these forces could either end up in an operational encirclement, or Sumy may simply be unable to use this reserve on other critically important directions, for example, near Sloviansk, Pokrovsk, or on the Zaporizhia front. Thus, the primary objective at this stage may be to tie down enemy reserves and prevent their redeployment to other sectors. We will continue to closely monitor how the situation develops, but even now it is clear that the situation here looks highly atypical. Next, we move on to the Sumy direction. From this area as well, information is coming in today about the continuation of Russian offensive operations. It is reported that the Russian army controls at least half of the settlement of Andriivka and has also advanced toward Kondrativka. I remind you that these settlements had already been under Russian control during the first phase of the Sumy offensive. This was followed by a Ukrainian counteroffensive, during which control was restored by the Ukrainian side. We are now observing a new attempt at advance by the Russian Federation. As we discussed earlier, the axis of movement is directed toward the next defensive belt of the city of Sumy. This includes the settlements of Mala Korchakivka, and other villages located in this area. These settlements form the next layer of defense, which Russian units are now gradually approaching. All of these events are unfolding against the backdrop of accelerated and extremely tense negotiation processes, as well as ongoing strikes against energy infrastructure facilities. However, the political background is no less important. Everything that is happening is accompanied by rumors, information leaks, and overt manipulation related to preparations for possible presidential elections in Ukraine, which, according to some reports, could take place in the relatively near future. If we look at Ukraine's media and public space as a whole, a political race has effectively already begun. We are witnessing the increased activity of several key figures and influence groups. Zaluzhny has intensified his public presence, Budanov has become more active, and Zelensky has sharply increased his media visibility. All of this indicates that the struggle for the presidential seat will be extremely fierce. At the same time, the question remains open as to what this seat will actually represent by the time the elections take place and how the entire system of power may transform. The consequences of possible presidential elections in Ukraine could be very severe and far-reaching. That concludes today's review, dear friends. Thank you for staying with us. Subscribe to the channel and support the release with your likes. All the best to you.